Welcome to the Golden Horseshoe Real Estate Podcast. I'm your host, Koukun Unosawa, mortgage broker with Synergy Mortgage Group. In this podcast, we chat with real estate professionals who share their local market insights, future outlooks, proven strategies, and practical tips, all right here in Ontario's Golden Horseshoe. So we have Tim Hong here. Tim is a realtor, a property manager, and a real estate investor now for many years. Tim and I go way back. We've known each other now probably close to a decade, right? It's been quite a while since since we met. But yeah, to start with, Tim, specifically the area you have focused on over the years is the KWC market, right? You
Yeah,
obviously
majority has been KWC. Some Hamilton now, more often because of the property management stuff, but
okay.
majority has been KWC in that Tri-City area since I born and raised there. Still have family there, so
Okay.
obviously I'm back there quite often.
Perfect, perfect. So, to start with, what's the market like in KWC now, both as an investor or even for, regular real estate transactions? Like what are some noteworthy things about that market right now that you're seeing?
So a couple things here for as in an investor, just looking purely for investment properties, it's you got a lot of selection essentially. There's a lot of listings available. You can put in your full conditions as an investor, say conditional of finance, conditional of inspection. You can negotiate your prices as well. There's a lot of choices as well. Previously, as an investor, a lot of times you would be buying a single family home and then potentially converting it into a duplex or maybe adding an additional unit in the back, a garden suite. Now you can just buy those duplexes that are ready-made, are converted already, and it's almost going to be cheaper for you to do that than
Oh,
doing the
wow.
full conversion now. I've only seen a couple sales of properties with 3 units where there is a duplex and a ADU at the back. So as an investor, you got a lot of choice. However, as an investor also, well, the numbers also aren't the greatest because of the interest rates right now. So you still need that cash flow to cover as an investor, but you do got the choice to kind of search what kind of cherry pick what you like,
Mm,
what you don't like, and then you can negotiate the terms, the prices with that potential seller as well.
okay.
Like on the agent side, it's a mixed bag. Um, Investors that are selling their property are having a difficult time because a lot of investors are on the sidelines, potentially just waiting for that good deal. So, investors that are looking to sell just got to be patient, just got to understand and have an expectation of what type of price that they will be getting.
Mm,
If you do have a tenant in that property, it's going to be much more difficult to sell. That could be because the market rate for that rent is much lower than it is. It could be tenant is not the cleanliness or not the most cooperative as well. So the investment properties are taking much longer to sell, and they're just sitting there. Single family homes are moving much quicker though.
mm.
But the market is definitely softer, and it's definitely a buyer's market just in general.
Interesting. Like the one thing I remember, I think this was back in 2017 when was it the foreign buyers tax came in? The one thing that surprised me back then was I remember Hamilton, the Niagara region where I was more active in, really slowed down. But to a certain degree, the KWC market almost stayed active for much longer and it didn't quite have the same sort of slowdown that we saw in the other markets, right? Do you remember that time at all?
Yeah, I think back then, just because KWC was growing, I think at a faster rate as
Mm,
well, and there was more growth within that city itself. So you have your two major universities, Waterloo and Laurier, and then you have your Conestoga College, which I think is a university. I think they call it a university now. I'm not too sure exactly. You got two hospitals, you got major companies through insurance head offices, you got Deloitte offices, you got Google offices, you had BlackBerry there. So you have a lot of tech stuff startup there. You have a lot of insurance companies as well. And so there's a lot of head offices there. They have one of the first running LRTs as well
okay.
across all the cities. So the infrastructure, the growth that we want to see as an investor, looking at it, population growth, economic growth, transportation growth is all there for that city to continue to grow. So I think that's why it saw probably the longer run
Mm,
and not as much as a dip potentially.
mm. And would you say the current market being softer, I assume since then the market just ran up quite a bit, right? So it just started at a higher place when sort of everything kind of slowed down this time. Because this time it's a bit different, right? It kind of matches most of the other cities where everything's kind of slowed down to a certain
Yeah,
degree,
yeah.
right?
Right now, it kind of matches everything else. The price ranges over the past couple years. Like after we had the height of the market back in what February 2022, the market dropped probably about 20-25%, and it's still
Okay.
sitting there right now.
That's not too bad, actually.
Yeah,
Like, that's actually not too bad because here in Niagara, we've seen in some cities, especially the ones a little bit further out. So, like, you have your St. Catharines that's near sort of commuting distance, but then you have your Fort Erie that's like another 30, 40 minutes away.
yeah,
We've seen prices in the smaller, further out cities really sort of take a hit
yeah.
versus 25% is not too bad. And how was the run up prior to that? It experienced the same run up as everywhere else, right?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. That run up was insane. Like you
Mm.
could like before right at that run up, you're buying a legal duplex if you wanted it to at the height was probably $1 million in around the $1 million mark. But now you can buy that same legal duplex probably for about 750 to 850 depending on
Okay.
size, location, condition as well.
Yeah. Yeah.
So the market definitely, but like, again, when that $1 million property duplex was there, interest rates were at 2%. Right now, they're sitting around 4.5, I think it is roughly.
Yeah. Which is
So the
not
numbers
too bad. It
in the
was.
general scheme, yeah, in the general scheme of things, it's not too bad. So
Yeah.
if you're looking for cash flow, you either potentially put more of a down payment down
Mm.
just to get that cash flow, or you run maybe neutral or slightly negative until rents pick up or interest rates go down. The rental market has been fairly healthy overall, the
Mm.
whole thing. Rental rates have dropped slightly, but nothing
Okay.
too crazy.
That's really good to hear actually, because that I'm seeing in a few of the smaller markets, prices have come down, but also rents have come down, but the tenant quality has really dropped. So even if you're getting a similar rent, like many of the better renters have gone out and bought starter homes. So you're looking at a worse quality tenant profile, at least what I'm seeing
Yeah, yeah,
here.
we're
So
seeing that as well. Like there is compared to say last year, just last summer, let's say, the renter profile is definitely a mixed bag right now. You
mm,
have to sift through quite a bit of applications, or you have to sift through quite a bit of responses through whatever Facebook to find that good tenant. But once you find that good tenant, jump on them right away because they actually also have a lot of choice
mm,
for tenant places out there as well. So we've seen some that tenants will say, "I'm ready, I want to apply," did the application, sent them the lease, and then they said, "No, I don't. I found something else."
wow. So it's
So
very quick there when you find the right
if,
sort of
yeah,
tenant.
when you find the right one, don't wait around. Obviously, spend the right amount of time to screen them. And
Mm,
as a property manager and talking to a lot of investors now, I'm telling investors that it does take a little bit longer to find a good tenant, but it's well worth it
mm,
to take that time and find that good one because it'll cost you way more in the long run, knowing the landlord tenant board delays and the issues it has than taking a month or two finding a good one. Good tenant profile, good credit score, good income, good references.
mm.
Just wait for the good one.
From a pure self-serving standpoint, I have a vacancy coming up that I'm a bit peeved about because this tenant just moved in last year. Is there anything that you look for or do to keep tenants in your properties a little bit longer, where say it's not a yearly turnover, but at least 2 or 3 years? Like, what's the duration you like to see, and is there anything you do to try to optimize for that?
2 to 3 years is probably ideal.
Hmm.
The 1 year is a little bit tougher. I had a similar situation where the tenant moved in about a year ago, and then they essentially they're moving up. They bought a condo, so
Hmm.
they're going to move out.
Okay.
So it also depends on the type of property. A lot of the one bedrooms or like the one plus dens, they usually typically turn over a lot faster. The
Okay.
two bedrooms, the two bed, two bath, they usually you might be getting a family or a couple, and they're waiting to go on to the next step, which is
Hmm.
typically moving up into a bigger rental or going to be buying a property.
Okay.
So it's just finding the type of tenant profile of that property. A lot of the times you expect them to probably stay two years or so and then move on. I've had some tenants stay 8 plus years. There's a property that I was dealing with that I filled the property back in 2016, 2017. And I'm just about to take over property management again for that property for that investor. And it's the same tenant that I put that tenant in. They're like, "Hey, you're Tim, you're back." I'm like, "Yep."
Oh wow.
So those
Now,
are good. Those are good tenants.
yeah.
Pay on time, keep the place well. But the problem with that type of tenant is that they're so below market rent
Mm,
sometimes, especially if it's been that 8 plus years,
yeah.
that it's hard for them to catch up. But at the end of the day, I'd rather have a good tenant that pays on time
Yeah.
versus trying to get a higher rent with a bad tenant.
100%. Especially if the landlord's cost structure is based on a 2017 purchase price and
Correct.
like mortgage amount, then like at that time, if it cash flowed, then yes, they could get more now, but hopefully their costs didn't go up significantly, right?
Yeah, yeah. Usually the most of the landlords that have it longer term tenants, they're in a decent position,
Mm,
unless they've again, if unless they hit like a refinance or
yeah.
a term where the interest rates where we saw it jumped from 2 to 5% within in the what in like 12 to 16 months or something like
Yeah,
that.
dude, man. Some of the mortgages, like the one on my home, so I bought in 21 and I had like a 1.5% variable rate.
Yeah,
That
that's
went to like
free money.
free money, but then like within a year and a half, it went to like
Yeah,
6.5%. It was like
that's a
ridiculous.
big jump. Yeah. So
Ridiculous.
I don't think we should have that type of interest terms here. I like the kind of the US one where it's you're if you get a 30-year mortgage, it's 30 years, that same interest rate for 30 years. You don't have to renew every 5 years or redo the term. So
Yeah, like it's funny though, in now that I've been doing the mortgage brokering for a little bit, there's a few clients that I've come across where they're like, yeah, in 2021, 2022, we thought rates were too low and we locked into like a 3 or 3.5% 10-year fixed. So at that time, they were paying a premium, right?
yeah,
Because
yeah,
rates were like 2, 1.5, so like to pay that extra,
yeah.
but it kind of worked out for them. But it's hard to pay up for that security, you
When
know,
you
like
when you know that the interest rates are sitting at like one and change.
exactly. So it's yeah, it's a tough one. Like yeah, pros and cons. But like you know the studies, right? Like the over the long term, they've always said like variable rates tend to be better. It's just when it's not, it's so painful.
Yeah, I think mathematically, I think over a long period, variable is right. But if you chunk it down into like that short period of 18 months where it jumped, yeah, it's definitely painful.
Mm. Yeah, man. So yeah, like speaking of property management, you now run a property management business. You have close to 45 units under management, right? How is like give us some of the stories. What's been some of the good stories, like things that you've seen, and what have been some of the challenges or just the annoyances you've had to deal with?
So yeah, so the property management I've been doing for quite some time, and I'll give you the backstory on this is when I was doing helping investors buy investment properties, a lot of them came to me and said, "I don't have a property manager. Can you manage it for me?" And at that time, I actually didn't know any property managers. I couldn't refer to any because I've never used them. I've always self-managed my own.
Mm.
So I started managing properties at that time, and this was back in 2016 when I started trying to grow very smallly, just own my own investors here and there, and then it kind of just stayed steady. Brought in a business partner. We grew it a little bit, and then we had to kind of stop just for personal reasons. So we sold off our little book of business. Um, Over the past year, we kind of got back together and started to grow again because what happened was about 2.5 years ago, I actually jumped into the small business side where I ended up buying a gift card store slash Canada Post outlet in Oakville. So that was kind of a side project that turned into full time, where the original idea was buying a business that wasn't being run properly. So the
Mm.
owners were there. It's like a house where you're trying to flip the house
Yeah.
essentially, or a house essentially, right? So I was doing that on the business side, the goal was to actually. So the business wasn't doing well. The owners were there for 15, 20 years. They didn't want to run the business, so jumped in, bought the business, replenished all the inventory, increasing sales, increasing customer service ratings and stuff like that. But we were an authorized Canada Post outlet. And as you know, the Canada Post strike last year at the end of 2024 screwed up the whole business essentially. So as a comparison for that 6 weeks that that strike happened, um, compared to 2023 numbers, our revenue dropped about 90%.
Wow.
So, and that was supposed to be the busiest time for us as a Canada Post outlet.
Yeah.
So with that, it was just like, you can't run a business when you drop 90% of your revenue.
No. And your
And that
expenses stay the same, right?
expenses stay the same. You're paying rent to the landlord. Everything stays the same. You have inventory to cover and stuff like that.
Yeah.
So that just essentially it just cripples a business,
Mm.
and you can't grow that business, that type of business, fast enough to get out of that or cover
Yeah.
that. So our lease was due up March this year, and our Canada Post dealership renewed March this year. So I just told both of them, hey, we're done. We're going to shut it down completely. It didn't make sense for us to keep that project. So we took a loss on that one, and then that gave me more time over this year now to grow the property management side. So now that's what I'm doing to grow it nice and slowly.
Mm.
And back onto property management, I've seen a lot of property managers grow very, very quickly,
Mm.
and then customer service just goes downhill, essentially.
Yeah.
So my goal with our property management is to be selective of the area that we're kind of looking for. So sticking to the areas that I know, Kitchener-Waterloo, Cambridge area, as well as Hamilton, and then picking the specific type of properties as well. So
Mm.
we're focusing on single family, duplexes, and condos. I've dealt with multifamily before, so I will avoid it, but potentially slowly dip my toe into it once we start to grow, once we get our systems properly in place and we have the infrastructure and bandwidth to actually get into those type of projects.
Mm.
Story wise for property management, the best one, and this was a while back, was um, we took over a property. An investor took over a property after they bought it. We had an existing tenant. Part of the deal was that tenant was allowed prepaid rent stayed for 3 months. At the end of 3 months, they didn't leave, or they didn't pay as well. So filed the proper paperwork. When we go in there, prior to the hearing, there was messages back and forth, and I was like, "Hey, are you going to pay? If you don't pay this much, you're going to go to the court hearing, LTB hearing, and stuff like that." And they messaged back saying, "Hey, is there any other non-monetary ways of compensation that we could avoid this situation?" And I'm like, "Unfortunately, not. This is what you owe, and this is the process that we go in."
Oh
Once
man.
we get the sheriff in there, and we had to go through the whole sheriff, we got to have the cops called and stuff like that. So we end up getting the sheriff at the end of the day. When we walk in, we find a stripper pole in the
Oh my
bedroom. I'm like,
God.
oh, that's what you wanted. So
Crazy.
apparently, like for some reason, I've seen probably a lot more stripper poles in properties than a lot of other investors for some reason. I don't know why, but that's kind of the running joke between a lot of the investors I know and colleagues, that I end up getting a lot of stripper pole to deal with.
Oh my God.
So it's always fun stories. Luckily, the tenants that I have now that I'm managing, because we're still small, they all have my number. So they
Mm.
message me directly, or they message through our online tenant portal to report maintenance fees or maintenance issues and stuff like that. But a lot of them, they just reach out. So they like that
Mm.
personality,
Mm.
that there's actual a person behind it. And I know that I can only grow that so much, because if I scale up to say 100 units, I don't know how much I can handle in terms of
Mm.
those calls. But I still want to provide that personal touch, because what I found is that that's what the tenant wants.
Mm.
They want quick communication and personal touch, essentially.
Mm.
And what I found is that they'll typically pay on time and take care of the property better, and provide less maintenance issues.
Mm.
So if a light bulb's out or something like that, they won't call you for a light bulb. If a smoke detector's running out of batteries, they'll just replace the batteries. If it's smaller stuff, if it's a plumbing issue, A lot of them just deal with it themselves and tell me after. And I was like, oh, okay, great. Let me know if you need any reimbursement for some parts or anything like that.
Mm.
And luckily that this group I have that tenants managing so far, they always pay their rent on time. So I actually rarely deal with the landlord tenant board. And that would be the end goal for any investor is to not deal with the landlord tenant board
Yeah.
because as we know, the delays could range probably from 2, 3 months, the quickest, to 6 to 8 months or even longer.
Yeah.
So it's always keeping that open communication with that tenant so you don't have to go to the landlord tenant board.
Yeah. No, that's some good insight there. In terms of, I have a question for you, just because you have a unique perspective. So you've worked as a realtor for a long time. You've now run this property management business more actively recently, but over many years as well.
Yeah.
And you have the experience of a bricks and mortar, right? Renting retail space, running that business. Um, what are some of the differences in the business models? Because I can imagine the realtor business, you deal with fewer transactions, but you get paid quite a bit on each. The property management business, it's a smaller revenue per property per unit, but there's a nice recurring aspect to it.
Yeah.
And then the bricks and mortar is there's a high overhead cost, but then once you pass that, I assume there's a good gravy train if you can keep it above that amount, right? So like talk through sort of the differences in those business. What have you learned? What do you like
Yeah.
slash not like now?
So for the realtor one, I would say is, as you mentioned, yeah, there's unless you have a steady stream of clients coming in, and for any sales job, essentially, that's your goal to get the stream of clients coming
Mm,
in, is that your income can vary drastically.
mm,
You could have a couple deals 1 month, but no deals the
mm,
second month, right? So, but the commission can fluctuate high and fluctuate low at the same time.
mm.
So there's good and bad with that one, and also the transaction time is much longer.
Yeah.
So you could be nurturing a client for 6 months, they end up buying, but it's a 3 month close, so you actually don't get paid for almost a year for that one
Mm,
client. So
yeah.
that's why you have to have that pipeline and build up that pipeline if you go into real estate as an agent or any sales job, that type of sales job in
Mm,
general. For brick and mortar, you're right. If you get past kind of paying for all your initial upfront cost for like say inventory and stuff like that, then the sales and they're I guess more predictable because you have customers coming in and you can control kind of your marketing and the same with real estate. You can control the marketing to bring the clients in. Uh, for us, it was smaller sales. The dollar average was a little smaller because people were buying car birthday greeting cards and Canada
mm,
Post stamps and stuff. So it was smaller, so we had to do more volume.
mm,
So for that one, unfortunately, we were only 2.5 years in, so we didn't experience the true profitability of that
mm,
because we had a lot of upfront costs when buying the business, replenishing for inventory. So we were just recouping that.
mm,
But I could see that if I continued to run that, it would be much better.
mm,
And with any of the retail business, is that you want to end up probably stepping away from that and hiring out because I was
mm.
spending 10 hours a day there.
Oh, wow.
So I was doing that, doing real estate, doing property management at the same time. So, but that one is like, so it was time wise, it was rough. So your dollarly wage for that one is very low until you start
Mm,
to scale properly.
yeah.
So that one, would I go into that retail one again? Probably not anytime soon. And then just comparing the both the property management, as you said, you get the reoccurring on the monthly management fees, and then on top of that, you get tenant placement fees. So if you
Mm,
continue to do the tenant placements, if you can do two, three, four a month,
mm,
then it's actually a nice bump on top of the reoccurring. But the reoccurring is going to be smaller as a percentage because depending on what you're charging on the management fees, you have to grow the volume.
yeah.
So I actually compared to the two, I actually like the property management quite a bit because I get the benefits of both. Is the
Mm,
reoccurring income, which everybody kind of wants to begin with, and that's kind of mimics almost the corporate job salary where you know you're going to get paid X amount as long as you're collecting the rent.
mm,
Obviously, if you don't collect rent, you don't get any management fees. So keeping a good set of tenants where you can collect the rent every single month, then you kind of predict exactly how much you're going to get management. And then doing tenant placements, whether that be one-off tenant placements for investors that don't need property management, or doing tenant placements for existing investors within the property management portfolio already. So
Interesting.
kind of want to just grow that. So right now we're about 45 doors right now. The goal is to get to 100, and then okay, do I want to grow from there, or what do I want to do to streamline it? So we're very I guess we're streamlined. It's just me and my business partner. He handles a lot of the maintenance coordination, and I
Okay.
deal with all the investors and the tenants and stuff. And so we have a pretty good setup.
Does
And
he actually do the fixing himself or he
no, so he's
coordinates
just the
with?
coordination. Yeah, yeah.
Okay.
So a lot of the tenants will reach out, and we've set it up where that we don't have to be on site for a lot of the stuff.
Okay.
And the contractors that we have in our Rolodex, we've known them, we've worked with them. We set them up directly with the tenant and say, okay, hey, here's the problem. Work out with the tenant. What's the issue? And they'll go fix it, and then we get billed, we pay for it, and then take the cost from the investor after.
Okay.
And the one thing that, one tip that could potentially help other investors is that a lot of the time, we actually ask the tenant to see if they are willing to do the work if they know.
Okay.
So, for example, because when they have some skin in the game and they realize that if it's important, they'll do it right away. So, for
Okay.
example, um, if it's let's say it's a clogged sink, for example, and they know that there's hair or something, I was like, okay, um, all you need to or something a little bit easier with a part on it. Let's say it's a toilet flap in the toilet. The
Mm.
toilet's running, the flap in the toilet isn't sealing properly, and they make a maintenance request. You go up to them and say, "Oh, that looks like you should just grab this part from Canadian Tire, and we'll reimburse you for the part." That way they can do it quicker. They don't have to wait for anybody.
Mm.
And obviously, if they know how to do it, if they don't, then obviously don't go that route. But
Yeah.
a lot of the tenants do no general small DIY stuff.
Mm.
It's not like we're getting them to fix like replacing a full out toilet or anything like
Yeah.
that. It's just a single part. So a lot of times it's just like, hey, do you know how to fix that? If they say yeah, it's like, okay, great, go grab that part. We'll reimburse you for the cost of materials. And one, it's quicker for the tenant. Um, they know what they're doing. It's cheaper for the investor because we actually don't have to pay for the labor.
Yeah.
Sometimes we do pay extra labor for the tenant if it's a little bit longer job, but the tenant or the investor just pays for the part then. So it saves them a little bit of money up front instead of, okay, if a handyman were to go there, they're
Yeah.
charging probably $120
Easily.
minimum
Easily, right? Yeah.
2 hour thing to just fix a toilet flap, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And even some of the smaller stuff, depending on timing, again, we'll try to help the investor is that like I might be able to go do that fix for them, and
Mm.
we charge a little bit of a discounted rate instead of a typical like handyman rate and stuff like that. So there are
Okay.
situations like that. So the end goal is to make sure like as I know as an investor, I want to keep cash flow as high as possible. So my
Mm.
goal as a property manager is to help that investor keep that cash flow as high as possible. Keep the rent coming in, keep the cost to a minimum so that it's easy for them, and all they get is they don't have to worry about multiple costs every single month at the same time.
Gotcha. Gotcha. And yeah, speaking of being an investor, you've now been an investor for quite a while. What's that journey been like for you? What are some of the sort of interesting properties that you've sort of acquired over the years? And um, yeah, how has that shaped your view of like what type of investments you would like to own moving forward?
Yeah, so I've started investing back in 2009 with rent to own, doing the rent to own strategy.
Okay.
So had a few of those ones. Some of them turned into straight rentals. Some of them ended up just tenant leaving and ended up selling the property.
Okay.
In hindsight, I would never sell any of the investment properties that I had, but certain situations required you to sell that property
Mm.
to use the funds for other sources. So
Yeah.
as an investor, looking back at it in hindsight, there's a few properties that I should have oh, should not have sold those ones. Should have kept them much longer. I've dealt with student rentals. The biggest property I had was a 6 unit building in Hamilton, across from Gage Park. So that property, um, it was too early for me in my investment career,
Mm.
that one. I had a joint venture partner, fairly new back in 2010. We bought that one.
Okay.
The goal for for any multifamily is go in. Once the tenant leaves, renovate, increase the rent, and keep on doing that for all six of the units.
Yeah.
So we were doing that. So we held that property for 4 years, but that tenant profile back in
Mm.
2010 in Hamilton, downtown, across from Gage Park, was not the greatest tenant
Yeah.
profile. Right now, it's much better. So there was a lot of maintenance issues, a lot of tenant issues where that property was supposed to cash flow off of day one. It never cash flowed, essentially.
Mm.
So we ended up selling it 4 years later. It went up in price in the 4 years, but all that equity, that growth that we threw back into the property over the 4 years for maintenance issues, landlord tenant board issues. So at the end of it, we actually ended up losing about 30 grand on that
Oh,
property.
wow.
So whatever balance that we had left, we actually threw it into one of the Mississauga townhouse complexes that obviously you know as well, in the same one. And that one, that student rental over, I guess, I think it was a 6 year period, grew much better with lots of cash flow on that one. So yeah,
Yeah, I remember we were at a dinner together, right? Where we were talking about sort of, we had just bought maybe the first unit in that building. And I think we were just discussing it. And then it was probably just like a few months later, like a unit pops up. And then I remember I forget the exact story, but I think like two units came up. We were messaging each other and you were asking like, are you offering on one of them? I'm offering on the other one. And I think we grabbed both of them back then, right?
I
This
think
was,
I think we did. I think I brought a couple investors first to see that property,
mm,
because it was obviously it was a good one, 6 rooms, and it was, I don't know if that one was rented right away. I don't remember. It's so long ago.
yeah.
But over the year that we owned it, like that was a cash cow. Like that was the days that we were cash flowing, I think 1,200 to $1,500 a month.
Mm,
And we knew it was more of a cash flow property because that type of condo complex wasn't growing in appreciation at that time.
mm.
But
Yeah, it
then
had like what was it? The maintenance or special assessment,
special
right?
assessment, the maintenance fees were high. It was bigger units. They were what, 1,600
Yeah.
square feet. So they're good sized units. So when we bought that property, we knew it was going to be just cash flow. It was a cash flow play. Along the way, because of the crazy market, the prices jumped drastically.
Yeah.
Then they came back down a little bit as well after COVID and all that stuff. Um, but that property, it served its purpose after. So, and
Mm,
then we just got tired of, actually, I got tired because I was doing all the management with my JV partners. Got tired of dealing with that, and we ended up selling that one, and then cashing out and doing some other stuff. Now is actually, I personally like, although not the greatest investment, I actually like condos.
mm.
Condos and single family rentals. So
Okay.
not duplexes, just single family. The reason being is that it's just much simpler. Um, if you have a duplex, you have two families, two potential issues, people complaining back and forth about stuff. So I just like single family or single condo unit, even though because they're just much easier. The condos, I don't really have to worry about foundation issues, roof issues.
Mm,
Even though depending on when you bought it and how much rent you're getting, you may or may not be cash flowing.
yeah.
Luckily, the ones that we have are either slightly negative or break even. So it's just much easier those ways. Buying condos now makes it's much difficult because of the price and the rental rates. And then single family, just a single family straight rental. Same concept. You got one family in, you can deal with that one person. You're not really the social worker dealing with two different
Mm.
people. I have a duplex right now. It's like the upstairs told me, oh, the downstairs when they have their significant other, I just hear yelling and screaming all the time. I'm like, okay, I don't need to be a social worker dealing with this stuff right now. And that's the property management side that you have to deal with. So as a personal investor, I'm like, okay, I'm dealing with this for other investors. For my
Yeah.
own, I just want to keep it simple.
Yeah.
Just long-term buy and hold is essentially
Mm,
what I like to do now. And every investor, I guess, has their different cycles of what they like, what they
mm,
don't like. And I know a lot of investors are looking for, oh, what's the next best thing all the time, or what are you
mm,
investing in? But and when I tell investors, I was like, whatever I like might not be a good fit for you either.
mm,
It's whatever fits your lifestyle, your cash flow number goals, your time frame goals as well. Some like investors like doing flips. Some investors like doing
mm,
student rentals. There's no right or wrong essentially. It's bad when you have investors jumping to different properties or investments when because they heard their friend do it,
mm.
but they might not be the same type of person to handle that type of investment property at the same time. So
Yeah, and it is interesting how I think investors also mature over the process of being an investor, right?
yeah, yeah,
Like,
for sure.
um, and yeah, I would say I was exactly that type of person when I got started. I was jumping from one thing to the next, looking like solving the current problem with the next investment, not realizing that that other type of property comes with other
The
problems,
problem,
right? So, um, and yeah, like I 100% resonate with that idea. Like, if you could make the numbers work, single family homes attract the best tenant profile. They're like the tenants pay their own utilities many times. It's like
yep,
just a higher rental amount attracts a better tenant who's going to live there, right?
yep.
So
And if
there's
you're looking for an exit strategy at the same time,
yeah.
they're much easier to sell because a lot of the single family homes, we're buying starter homes that are single
Mm,
family, good neighborhoods, so they're usually much easier to sell
yes.
versus a duplex, versus a condo, especially in this market. But
Mm,
again, like the markets move and stuff like that, so it just depends. But like long term, I personally like long term, just buy and hold.
mm. And like the one thing that I will place more of a priority on now is just the area you buy in. Like,
Yeah,
can you get a property in like a really nice neighborhood where the tenant demand is going to be really high? Like, I know one client of mine bought a duplex in Welland in like the street was so. There were like some multifamily, some single family homes. It wasn't like the best of, it wasn't like a high-end neighborhood per se, but that pocket was in a school district of like a very highly rated sort of French school,
yeah,
right? And the tenant quality this guy was getting was like a couple making over 10 grand a month wanted to rent the upper, and they're like, we need our kid to go into that school. Like, we don't care about the property, we don't care about the street, we just like that's the area we need to be in. There's no other rentals in that area.
yeah,
You want to be there, right?
yeah.
So yeah, sometimes those intangibles about the area, the neighborhood can can go a long way to getting good tenants, good rents, right?
Yeah, and it just makes it easier once you have a good tenant in there. They
Mm,
pay the rent on time. You might check on it twice a year just to kind of see what's going on. Do a drive by here and there. You don't hear from them. If you do hear from them, a lot of the times they might have to they deal with their own issues themselves, and they have that pride of ownership.
mm,
So it's again, it's the type of tenant profile, and we do as investors and property managers. Unfortunately, we do kind of stereotype the properties of the tenants that we're going in. So when I'm filling properties, the funny thing is that I make sure the tenant jumps through the loopholes that I put in place just for that tenant showing, for a viewing for them.
mm,
So, because I want them to follow instructions, because if they can't follow simple instructions at the very beginning, once
mm,
they're in there, it's what are they going to be doing and how many issues they're going to bring to me after. So for a tenant to come in at the very beginning, where again, let's assume it's a Facebook Marketplace ad and they respond, hey, it's this available. I have a system set up right now, basically, it's just a copy and paste. So usually I have good photos and I have a video walkthrough. And then I'm using an appointment system right now to set up showings. And I set those up at the beginning of the week. So, for example, let's say I have a showing on Saturday at 2 o'clock. So I'll post a copy and paste saying to that tenant, hey, yes, it is available. First off, watch this walkthrough video. Second, if you want to book a viewing in person, click the link below. This will have the availability. And they click the link and it'll show 2 p.m. So they have to go through those steps first. Because one, if they see the video, they see the ad, they see the description, they see the video, okay, they know exactly what they're getting
mm,
themselves into. Sometimes they don't, obviously, and you can tell those tenants that no, once they show up, that they don't. But and they book the viewing through the app that I have. Um, Once they book that viewing, they have to enter their name, phone number, and email address and answer 4 questions of mine. The questions are, okay, how many people are moving in? Do they have any pets? Do they have any cars? And what's the rough household income? Just for me to get an idea
mm,
of what I'm looking for. So I'm kind of pre-screening them already. And then they get reminders with with their registration. They get a reminder 24 hours beforehand and an hour beforehand as well before the showing. It doesn't deteriorate no-shows because there's people that no-show all the time. Either no matter what you do, there's always no-shows,
Yeah.
but it's the goal to deter them. So, but once they jump through these hoops, when they get to the property, at least I know they're somewhat qualified,
Mm,
and they're the type of tenant that I would want in that property. A lot of the times they're going to say, "Hey, can I see this today?" I'm like, "No, come during this time,"
mm,
because I don't want to show them that I am that I'll drop everything to show them the property
mm,
because they'll expect that same thing. And this might be a high, like not a direct correlation, but they might expect that same type of thing if there's a maintenance issue.
mm,
It was like, oh, my light bulb burnt out. I need it fixed right away. I'm like, no, you don't, kind of deal. So I make sure the tenants like follow the instructions, and usually the good ones are very easy to work with.
mm,
And then getting to the property is that I set a specific time. Say it's 2 p.m. on Saturday. If that tenant does not message me beforehand that they're late or that they're no showing, I will not show that property to them. So if they show
mm.
up at 2:10, and if I'm still there, I won't show it to them. And I say, hey, you're late for your appointment. You didn't tell me that
Oh,
you're going to be late. Because if they can't, again, if they can't follow very simple instructions,
yeah.
what happens when the rent's late?
They're not going to communicate that it's going to be
Correct.
late.
Yeah.
What's the
So
reason
like
for
it's
it?
a
Yeah.
simple message saying, hey, I'm going to be running late. Can you wait for me? I'm like,
Mm,
depending on timing, I'm like, sure, I'll wait for you.
yeah.
Or if they're like, oh, sorry, I can't make it today. Something came up. Can I reschedule? Yes, I'll reschedule for you. I've had I've had many for some reason. A lot of emergencies happen for some reason when I'm doing tennis showings. I don't know it's because of volume. I've had people with car crashes, kids
Oh,
getting hit
wow.
by cars, parents with head injuries.
There's got to be
Like
some
I
percentage of that's just made up,
Oh,
right?
I
Like,
like I would say a lot of it's made up. I would say a lot of it's made. If some of it's like there's so many emergencies. Every single showing there's like because I stack my appointments every single time it's a family emergency. I'm always tempted to say what's the family emergency exactly. But like if they tell me because I'll what I'll do is I'll message them back after and saying, hey, guess you didn't show up for your appointment. Thanks for letting me know. That's just a little bit more sarcastic there. And they say, oh, there was an emergency. Can I reschedule? I'm telling, no, I can't reschedule
mm,
because it's a simple message. Like if you were going to a doctor appointment or an appointment with your dentist or meeting with a lawyer, if something
mm,
came up, you would tell them
mm,
typically, right? So I want to set that same standard for the people kind of viewing the property. Whether they view it like that or not, it doesn't matter to me. I
mm.
want to attract those same type of tenants in the properties, and typically the good ones that go through make it much easier for you as an
Do you let
investor.
them know at all earlier in the process? Like, please let me know if you're not able to make it
Yeah, yeah.
because
So it's in the reminders. If you can't make it, let me know as
okay,
soon as
okay. So
possible.
you've set the
I set
expectation.
the expectation,
Yeah,
but again, a lot of them don't read through the proper text and stuff like that. They
yeah.
don't watch the videos. They don't click the links and stuff like that. So I can tell right away if they're going to
Mm,
be potential issues.
mm.
Sometimes I'll let them through. If I have a good tenant already booked, I'll let them come anyways, just to kind of get some more activity going at the same time to see
Yeah.
if they're actually could be decent. Majority of the time, they're not going to be
Mm,
potential good tenants.
interesting.
So it's just setting up the proper screening to make sure that you actually get the right tenants. And sometimes it does take a little bit longer,
Mm,
unfortunately. But usually, no, knock on wood, not little to no issues with the majority of tenants I deal with.
yeah. The worst issues I've had with tenants have been when I got desperate to put someone in there because it's been vacant for a month or two
Yep.
and it's bleeding money and I just want to receive a rent payment to cover my mortgage. And
Yep.
then like those are the most expensive mistakes because then
Yep.
when they stop paying, it's 6 months through the LTV process, potentially some damage to the unit, or at least a repaint, right, to freshen it up, and then a
Yep.
leasing process again. Like it's
Yeah.
the cost of the wrong tenant is so high.
Yeah. And I've been through those mistakes as well. So it's just hopefully learning from those mistakes and making sure that you have the right steps. Because if it was vacant for 2 extra months,
Mm,
let's say that was $1,500 a month rental or 2,000, that'd cost you 4 grand
yeah,
in the grand scheme of things. But they missed those 2 months payment there, and you can't evict them. That's going to cost you
yeah,
3 times as much minimum.
yeah, yeah.
So it's just, yeah, just finding the right tenants. And it does take a little bit longer. We're seeing a lot more fraud now, a lot of the days.
Okay.
Fake documents, even with agents bringing potential tenants in,
Oh wow.
we're seeing fake documents at the same time. So if it's listed on MLS, for example, the other agents will bring a potential tenant in. They'll submit the preliminary documents. We've seen multiple times that those preliminary documents look like they're a little bit forged,
Mm.
or doctored or whatever.
How do you
Um,
tell? Like, what are some of the common things you've seen?
the credit reports, a lot of
Okay.
them are standard from Equifax, and you can tell right away if something is kind of off in terms of the
Okay.
numbers.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
There are websites and online sites that you can run PDFs through,
Okay.
to check to see if they're actually legitimate or if they've been doctored of any kind.
Okay.
And then a lot of the times, because the agent doesn't know, they might not do
Mm.
their full screening at the same
Yeah.
time on their side, right? They might
Yeah.
just, again, we know a lot of the agents in the industry that, again, sometimes do get desperate. They just
Mm.
want that paycheck commission. So they're going to bring a tenant in. Oh, it's a $3,000 rental in Mississauga. Oh, I'm going to bring that tenant. I'm get 1,500 no matter if I find a good
Mm.
tenant here. This tenant comes to me. It looks good. I'll just bring them in here, submit the offer. But they
Mm.
don't even realize what they're submitting. So a lot of the agents sometimes don't even know at the same time.
Oh wow.
So it's just doing the proper due diligence, screening them. Luckily, there's also sites like Open Room,
Yeah.
that help see if tenants have had a bad history at the same time.
Mm.
So using a lot of new technology nowadays to help that process. So it's much easier. Luckily, I've never run into what they call a professional tenant, and hopefully I
Mm.
don't because they can't get through these screening processes.
Yeah.
But
And they probably would tend to avoid a property manager then. Like they're probably looking at like mom and pop landlords who don't have their systems in order. As soon as they start seeing a screening process, they probably walk away just because it's going to be harder to fool you the same way that they could easily fool, an individual landlord,
yeah,
right?
and if they're good tenants and they say they're working full time, um, typically they won't be that professional tenant because
Mm.
nowadays, if that professional tenant, at the end of the day, once they get kicked out, you can report their rental debt
Yeah.
on their credit report.
Yes.
So what happens is that
You're not going to have a good
they're
score.
not going to be able to do it again
Yeah.
whatsoever. So
Mm.
usually good tenants, and again, I would say majority of the tenants are good people, and they don't have these. Uh, their morals are actually or ethics are actually good, right? So
Mm.
it's just the far and few between that, as you
Mm.
mentioned, the mom and pop or the single investor, they might get taken advantage of it. So you kind of figure out, okay, where they work and what they do.
Mm.
So then you don't get taken advantage of at the same time. Because there's a lot that are, unfortunately, there's a lot that are on government funding as well.
Mm.
And we can't garnish those wages at the same
Okay.
time.
Yeah.
And you can't go after them. So you know it's not a good, so we had a family of, it was in Hamilton, it was a family of, it was a couple and 7 kids. So it was they were renting for the whole house. Saw the house, they liked it, went through the application process, but they didn't work. They were on ODSP, Ontario Works, and Child Benefit. And I'm like, is this all the income that you have there? And it's like, yes, but Child Benefit eventually disappears as the childs get grow
Yeah.
as they grow,
That's right.
right?
Yeah.
So they might be able to have that same child income for first couple years, but as the kids grow, all that disappears.
Especially when you have seven. Like the oldest is
Yeah,
good.
yeah. So it's like something like that. It's you want to help the family, but as an investor,
Mm.
it's not the greatest tenant profile
Yeah.
to deal with. And we've helped a
Yeah.
lot that have bad credit, have gone through that are on ODSP, Ontario Works. So we've
Mm.
worked with a lot of them, but it's just overall general profile of figuring out what you want in your tenant, in your property at the same time.
Yeah. Shifting the conversation slightly to the personal side. And I will say this is the question that the answers to this question, not to set the expectation too high, but the answers I've heard to this question have stuck with me for days after each of the prior podcasts that I've done. So it is, if you had one message to share, it can be to your younger self. Maybe it's one of your kids or you're like a niece or nephew. Like if you had like a life lesson or something that you wanted to share, what would it be?
So I actually thought about this one because you sent us some questions beforehand. So one of them would be delay gratification,
Okay.
and sacrifice. uh, early so you can benefit later on. So a story here is that when we had our third child, we were living in a townhouse at that time, and I had two single investment properties, one in Kitchener, one in Cambridge. At that time, we should have stayed in that townhouse, even though it was be a little bit
Mm,
smaller for us. Because what I had to do was I had to sell the two investment properties to move to a bigger house to pay for the down payment and the renovations. And that puts you in a position that isn't going to be as comfortable
mm,
as the current one. So if I didn't have to move, sorry, so if I didn't choose to move, I didn't have to move. So if I didn't
mm,
choose to move to a bigger house for the kids to have room and stuff like that, if I waited a couple more years until the newborn was maybe 2 or 3 and then do it,
mm,
I probably would have been in a much better position than I am now than
mm,
if I changed that. So just delaying that slight delay, and it might not be like a huge sacrifice,
mm,
and it might only be a year or 2 years, but that small little switch could swing open, I guess the small switch could swing open big doors later on, essentially.
mm,
Because you jump to a bigger house, higher expenses, monthly expenses, higher mortgage payment, everything's higher, so then you got to make more and stuff like that.
mm.
So it's just that one thing I probably would have been, hey, should have kind of talked it over more and didn't rush into it as quick as we did.
Mm.
But it kind of is what it is. And when you make those type of decisions after, you just got to figure it out after, essentially.
Of
So
course,
then,
of
yeah,
course.
because then I
Yeah.
would have still had that townhouse and I still would have had two rental properties, extra rental properties at that time. But I had to sell the
Mm,
two rental properties. And that was the time, what, it was 2018. So it didn't run
mm.
up yet. So if
Yeah.
I waited those 2 years, everything would have ran up. Like obviously the house, the new house would have been more expensive
More.
and stuff like
Yeah.
that. So it might have been a little bit proportional, but I wouldn't have had jumped into as quick. So it's more about
Mm.
sacrificing a little bit for a short term, so you can kind of reap the rewards later.
Yeah, I will say, like this question never fails to inspire. Like honestly, even what you shared actually really resonates with me right now because um my wife and I, so we bought like a semi-detached in Welland, right? So starter home. We bought at the peak in like 21. So we paid like 480 for it. Got a good deal at that time, so it's still probably worth something like 450 to 480. It hasn't come down too much. It was like early 21. But we're like we can afford to buy something bigger, but then our monthly expenses are higher. And then it's like we only have one kid, so like do we need more space? Probably not. Like this home sort of satisfies everything we need. It's
Yeah,
just like it's ingrained to us that like yeah, you should aspire to have, a detached home or something bigger and have more space, all of that. But like that's constantly been something I've been thinking about like is if I can delay the gratification and it's not even delaying like the reward for delaying it is I will have more financial security in the present. It's like I just get to have less expenses, less like pressure. I need
yeah,
to make a certain amount to cover my bills, to cover that higher cost, right?
yeah. Because like unless money's not an issue, then it's not an issue. Then it
Mm,
doesn't matter, right? But like majority of people, okay, the income covers all their mortgage expenses. Everybody has a
mm,
mortgage, rent, whether that be,
yeah.
right? So if you're delaying that gratification, and it might not be a huge sacrifice, it might be just
Mm,
something really small, right? So if do you actually need the bigger space and stuff like that? Like I love where we are now and stuff like that. Like so, there's no, I guess I wouldn't call it a regret or anything like that,
mm,
but it was just could have there would have been the choices that might have changed the trajectory of where I am
mm,
as well at the same time. And this could be going for an investor at the same time is figuring out, okay, do you need to jump into as many doors as possible right away? Or do you want to just keep a couple, maximize the efficiency of those ones and just kind of grow? Because once we've seen and we've heard stories where investors grow so fast, get over leveraged, and then everything falls apart.
Well, it seems like a common, and this is interesting because there are companies in Japan that are over 1,000 years old, right? And there's been many studies on these companies, like what allows you to stay alive for that
Mhm.
long, right? Um, and the two like defining characteristics, one is that they don't expand too much, they don't grow overseas, they don't like grow essentially. They sort of stay in their lane. They may incrementally improve, but they don't do like the massive expansions.
Yeah,
And the second is they avoid debt. Now, for real estate, it's unrealistic to avoid debt altogether,
it's tough. Yeah.
but for businesses especially, right? Like imagine that store. Like, did you end up taking any business loans to buy that store, or were you able to do it just out of pocket?
No, we took a business loan to buy the to buy the inventory
Okay.
for that one. So like ideally, obviously you don't want to, but we had to in that case. So
Gotcha, gotcha. Yeah, so again, like it's like you can have a business completely get shut down, but the debt still remains,
yeah,
right? So like that, just those two characteristics, it's very interesting to me. Like as we make our own decisions within our business, it's like yes, growing potentially makes you more money, but then it comes with all of the other challenges of like, how do you keep up that client experience? How do you make sure that your systems can handle the growth, right? Like
yeah,
even what you shared about like prop running a property management business and then being intentional about how many homes you manage, who are the tenants in those properties, are they of a certain standard that they'll behave a certain well, they'll take care of certain things, right? I think that it's a it's a very wise way about going building a business, because I've definitely seen the same as well with property managers who overextend, right? There's like two camps: one that just doesn't do their job properly and just completely drop the ball, and others of like who are good people, good business owners, but they went a bit too far too fast,
yeah,
and then it it ends up being the same result where
yeah.
the
It
ball
like
gets dropped, right?
yeah, and then you end up burning bridges because you can't keep up with the quality that you've originally started with.
Mm,
So it might be a good run for 1 to 2 years,
yeah.
but the long term uh, of that potential business might be only
Mm,
that couple years. And as you mentioned, those bigger companies that have been over 100 to 1,000 years in Japan, it's like, what did they do to
mm,
consistently grow nice and small to be big
mm,
enough instead of growing out? So I've had investors always mention to me, "Hey Tim, can you manage my property out in St. Catharines or and stuff like that?" I'm like, not at the moment right now. I don't have the bandwidth and I don't want to grow there. So like I maybe eventually grow there, but at this time, no, just want to stick to kind of focusing
yeah.
on what I'm doing. And I do have to deny some stuff, even though I want that business, is
Mm.
that I know I'm going to be pulled too thin until I start to grow a little bit more. And that's business challenge on to learn about at the same time.
Yeah, no, that's very wise, man. Like saying no is the hardest thing, especially if you have the personality that you care about people, you want to help, they're coming to you asking for your help. It's like the hardest thing to be like, I can do it, but I can't do it right now. It just doesn't fit the type of business I'm trying to build,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. And yeah, sometimes you kind of want to do it all because you know there's potential income. So you're like, okay, I can make a little bit of money,
Yeah.
but sometimes you have to be like, okay, it doesn't make sense to do it. Because if I take on one tenant placement in St. Catharines, for example, and that's my only one,
Yeah.
I'm based in Mississauga. So for me to drive there for an hour and 20 minutes for once a week for that one showing, or two showings and I got nothing
Mm.
else there, it doesn't make sense time-wise and stuff like that. So I'm again slowly growing and learning about these business challenges at the same time.
Awesome, awesome. Tim, this was an awesome conversation. If anyone wants to reach out to you for either your property management service or to work with you as a realtor client, we'll definitely link your contact details in the show notes. And yeah, is there anywhere people can follow you if they're interested to see what you're up to?
Probably the most active, not too active, but I'm on Instagram.
Okay.
So just search up my name, Tim Hong. I think I have a couple underscores before and after.
Okay.
So you'll be able to find me in my pictures profile there. I
Okay.
usually like to post a little bit of funny stories that I deal with the tenants and stuff like that. Um,
I've seen a bunch of them.
yeah.
The messages are hilarious.
Yeah, so it's like dealing with the tenants, it's you gotta have some fun with it sometimes. And I know a lot of investors think the same thing, but don't say it because I get a lot of messages back. I'm like exactly what I want to say, but I don't want to
Mm.
say it to them. So I do it on behalf of all the investors out there. So it's just kind of keeping fun. Again, love to answer any questions for anybody out there at the same time.
Awesome, awesome. Well, Tim, appreciate your time here, and yeah, looking forward to the next one.
Cool. Thank you.